This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information to expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers.
Welcome to the Art of Network Engineering podcast. This is The Voice, and this is your host, Aaron Weiler, also known as Aaron Engineered, everywhere books are sold. AJ, Dan, and Andy, three of the coolest guys you've never met in real life, but you will today. Andy, how's your day, sir?
Pretty good. Got up at 5 a.m. for maintenance window, did the thing all day, and here we are.
And here we are. It's not 5 a.m., folks. Just an update, so you know. It's not 5
Just another day.
It
was a good day.
I actually got up pretty early today, too, which is not typical for me. But anyway, Mr. Richards, how are you, sir? How do you pack it?
I'm doing great.
It's good to see your face.
How
You
are
got
you
the Art of Network Engineering T-shirt on over there.
Oh, yeah.
Look at you. Where'd you get that bad boy, huh? Share your secrets.
Off the internet.
You did. It came from the internet.
How do I get one of them?
Well, Andy,
You just put your card in and it sends it to you.
you put your credit card in the CD drive, and it just comes to your door. Oh, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Okay. Last and certainly not least, AJ, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm swell. Thank you for asking. Peachy as usual. Normally, I'm the one. This is a unique episode because not only are we traveling countries, but we're traveling continents as well as time zones and the international dateline. So if you didn't know that was a thing, have fun Googling that. But in case you didn't know, if you go backwards enough, and backwards I mean like to the west, the opposite direction of the way the time zones are laid out, you actually end up in the next day, which, yeah, look, I'm just a network engineer. I don't get it either. So
It's time travel.
it literally is time travel, but all the way from a 24-hour plane ride away is Daniel, and your at is what's your at? Handle.
Like Daniel Teycheney.
Daniel
Yeah.
Teycheney. We had to ask him how he says his last name too, because he's got a lot of Y's in there, and we didn't want to hack it to death. But I went ahead and hacked it to death anyway. So thank you for joining us. We know we're on a bit of a time delay here too, because this is how we work in real life. We're dealing with some latency. So we'll ask you a question and then give you like half a second to answer, because I know there's a little grace period there. I've talked to people across the world before, and sometimes it's not very easy, but thank you for joining us. We know it's also about to be summer down there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Yeah,
it's
man.
great to be here.
Yeah, man. So like we got started, you know, we've been talking about stuff like just kind of how the state of things are, and you know, the podcast, right? All we do is talk about what's relevant to us, and basically like how you get ahead and things like that. So you've been listening, right? You've heard every episode, I'm assuming, up to this point, because we were just talking about Knox's episode.
Yeah, that's right. I've been listening to all of them so far.
Okay. So
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
first
you.
and foremost, thank you so much. Secondly, though, as an Australian, like, you're in a completely different like mindset, right? So when you hear us and you hear our guests and stuff, are there things that like resonate for you, or is it just like a completely different like outlook that you have just because of like where you're from?
Yeah, as a result of listening to the podcast, there are a lot of themes that correlate between Australia and here, and the people that you've had on the podcast all have very similar traits and similar approaches to things. So I think that in a lot of ways it's similar. A network is a network. Like
Right.
it routes packets just the same way in Australia as it does in Ghana, in London, in the US. So I mean, there's only so many certain ways that you can do networking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's similar. There's definitely some cultural differences in regards to how companies are structured and how people progress through their careers. That's probably a little bit different. Also, being in for lack of a better term, a satellite country where a lot of the innovation doesn't come out of. Sometimes it's easier for us to look from the outside in on what's happening in places like the US. So that's a little bit different as well. And then in terms of how networks get delivered or products get delivered to end customers, the structures, maybe we use slightly different terms here. So I believe in the US there's the term value-added reseller. We use a slightly different term called professional services or managed services, which roughly does the same thing, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to summarize, there's a lot of similarities and there are some differences.
So mainly just like how you guys name things and, just some little bits and pieces here, which is, is true for just the language period, right? Just over time, there's just things we call different things, which makes sense. That actually reminds me of the time. Do you ever watch The Office?
Yes.
Okay.
Both versions.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, by the way, because the British version is awesome and it's very underappreciated. But there's a part where they go on a sales call. It's Andy and Michael, and they go on a sales call together, and he's like, man, I really shrewded that one back there. And he's like, what? He's like, well, that's what people say around the office when they screw something up, that they really pulled a shroot or they shrewded it. And he's really just trying to get Michael to hate Dwight, right? And he's like, yeah, it's weird. He's like, I wonder why they call it that. This is Andy like trying to fish for it. He's like, I wonder why they call it that. And Michael just goes, I don't know. Like, where do words come from? Just like serious as a heart attack. It's so true though. It's like, like who knows? Over time, right? It's just the way it is. So you got a pretty cool job though. So you work for, and I want to get to a little bit of specifics, not to name names, but just kind of like in your industry a little bit. So, but you work for a toll road, right?
Yeah. So I've been in my current role for a few months now, and I work for a toll road provider called Transurban, and they own and manage and operate toll roads in Australia, in the Washington area, in the US, and also one toll road or one toll bridge in Montreal. So
that's interesting.
This is the first time I've worked in this particular industry, but I've worked in a whole bunch of verticals over my career. So then how does the company do that? 'Cause it's got my wheels turned in here. So they just like go and bid on toll contracts, I'm guessing? Yeah, so it's different for each country.
Yeah.
But just to talk a little more about Australia as a country, on the eastern seaboard is where the vast majority of the population live, and in those areas, Australia in terms of modern civilization is a relatively new country. So over since World War II, when there was a large intake of immigrants, we've had quite a large population expansion. So in order to build road assets so that people can get from A to B, the government contracts out the building of those roads or the managing of those roads, etc. So it's different in each country. So some of the roads are already existing and need to be maintained. Others need to be built from scratch.
Yeah, because I remember like a long time ago, I think it was like in high school or something, and I was watching the Discovery Channel, and they were showing these roads that go from Eastern Australia to Western Australia, and it's like it is here, right? Most of the United States is kind of empty like that as well, but it's not as desolate as yours can get out in the quote-unquote bush. But you guys have laws where you can have a tractor trailer with like 6 trailers on it, right, out there?
Yeah, they have they call them road trains.
That's insane. If you're listening to this, Google it. It's freaking insane to see, like, and the reason though is because it's such a long road, right? And it's like from I mean, it's thousands of miles, so it's like they don't need to turn, right? So you just kind of do that. That's cool. I was half expecting you to be like, yeah, we own one of those roads, and I was like, whoa, that's impressive. So like the toll road stuff, as far as IT goes, then you got hired to do what job? Are you just a network Are you a network engineer, or are you a junior network engineer? Are you the director of procurement? What's your job?
My role is I've been hired as a network automation engineer.
Dun 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 dun.
Watch out, Andy.
Yeah. So
Andy's
wait,
gonna
no,
run.
you didn't. What's funny is how you phrase that. Like, well, what I was hired for was.
oh no. No, I'm definitely doing network automation.
So
In fact, do it all day, every day, which is great for me because that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm passionate about. That's what I'm starting to get good at. So it's really the sweet spot of everything that I'm looking for in a role.
is that a common?
At this
So
point in my
is
life.
that a common thing down there to see that job open?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And the other thing too is, even though Australia is large in size, it's not really that large in population. So
Yeah.
as you four are aware, you need to be a certain size company to even warrant hiring a single network engineer.
Yep.
Then you need to be, X amount of scale to have a team of network engineers, and then you need to be an X amount of scale larger to maybe prioritize network automation over network engineering. Not that I think that they're different, but from a hiring perspective, that is why there's so many limited roles, because companies and the size of companies and the size of networks in Australia, there are some big networks, like national banks and that sort of thing, or national supermarket chains, but there isn't 1,000+ sites. There's very small companies with that sort of footprint. The company that I work for, they as part of their strategic plans are planning to use automation more and more to deliver business outcomes more broadly, not just network automation. So they're probably one of the more innovative companies in that space in terms of looking at the market and trying to find a smarter way of doing things.
Is that a common thing though for you? Like, you were looking, like you wanted to specifically do that. So like, is that something you do a lot, or is this something that you just started doing? Like, did you have a network engineer role before where you were in automation, or like talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess do you want me to go back to the start?
Yeah, you know what? You know what's interesting, and we do normally do this, but I think that our audience would be super interested to hear how, even like how high school goes for you, right? Because we learn way different things than you do, of course, just based off of priorities. Like, who tells us
we
what to do?
learn how to ride kangaroos to work.
Wait a minute.
Because I was going to ask it.
They're actually the biggest competitor for toll roads. So
The kangaroos? Yeah, wait a minute, because I thought you were just born like that. You just don't naturally know how to do that? They teach you how to do it?
Were you not born in a kangaroo pouch?
Oh, stop us, dude. Hey, you feel free
Yeah.
to throw out all the McDonald's and bald eagle jokes you want. We can take it, man.
But before we wander too far away, I just want to ask this question. So you're a network automation engineer. Do you also have just network engineers, or just people that focus on the network engineering and then you do the automation piece?
Yeah, so the vast majority of the team would be network engineers. I'm the sort of the only full-time network automation engineer, although we will hopefully be expanding in that area. So yeah, it's something that we're trying to build some capability. We're trying to build platforms, and ultimately my role is to deliver business outcomes, but also to enable those network engineers to move away from menial tasks or compliance tasks. And a lot of the tooling that I hope to build and plan to build will be to alleviate some of the more menial jobs that people have to do.
Like what? Give us an example.
Yeah, so a lot of companies, not just the company I work for, I've done consulting roles in the past, have compliance obligations. So PCI, personal card information,
Yep.
compliance. So automating those evidence gathering activities so that you can supply them to auditors. But more importantly, you usually have to prove your compliance yearly in Australia, but you really don't want to wait 11 and a half months to find out that your network has gone out of compliance. That's something that you want to automate and detect the drift as soon as possible.
You got Andy sweating over there. He knows probably more than anybody here. You mentioned
he said PCI.
Right, he said
was
PCI.
like,
he got triggered. You mentioned like that, right? Like the auditing and stuff. Like you work for a toll road. So for those that are listening and don't know what PCI is, you're right. It's pay card information, right? So it's your credit card information, like the code on the back, the expiration date, all that stuff has to be protected so that we as consumers don't get hurt by a data breach, right? So, and what you're saying is since the toll roads collect money, just like every other business in the world, they are responsible for maintaining their data integrity so that somebody doesn't attack you and then get all of our we know it happens, like, and I'm not saying your company, but happens all the time, right? Stuff gets breached. Basically what you're trying to do is, since that's just really a lot of, like, getting all that data for the auditors is just a very, like, I don't know, blocking and tackling sort of situation, we call it, right? Where it's like, it's like grunt work where it's easy, but it's just very time consuming and there's a lot of data and spreadsheets and crap, right? Cool.
Takes a long
I'd say
time.
that's probably relative to like how many network nodes you have in your entire network there.
I've been pulled into those PCI audits, and it's a nightmare because we weren't automating at the time.
Well, then let me ask you this, because that brings up actually just another thing that they could get you for. So, for instance, in America, like, the banks are very heavily regulated when it comes to, I think this has to do a lot with the auditor, personally. They're audited based off of, like, what they're using. So the guy that's the auditor, or the girl that's the auditor, goes in, checks what they have, make sure that everything's buttoned down, like you said. But if I can almost guarantee you that if this, like, let's say it was a bank and the guy was doing an audit, or a girl was doing an audit, and you were like, oh yeah, I'm the automation engineer, they would be like, wait, what? And out of fear, they would probably say, you can't do that, right? Like, that would be out of compliance. And I don't know for sure, right? Like, if you could do that at a bank here, but I just know how, like, I know how stingy they are, and maybe Andy can back me up on this, but they tend to fear and just blanket statement know everything they don't understand. So, great example, SD-WAN. I mean, you're an automation guy. SD-WAN is like the consumer version of that, right? Where it's like, it's very easy. It's, it's zero touch, but touch only if you need to, and then set it and forget it, right? But I know that auditors out there, like governments, all that stuff, they're very stringent when it comes to that. They just shy away. They're like, nope, that's actually out of compliance. You can't use the cloud or something, right? That was a big fear for a while too. Nope, you can't use the cloud. It's not compliant, or PCI compliant, whatever. So yeah, as far as your auditing, like your day-to-day auditing goes, like, they're auditing you for PCI compliance, but they haven't said a word about you being like an automation dude. They don't get scared by that.
Yeah. So, I've only recently joined, so I haven't been around during this particular audit. But
okay.
It essentially, you need to provide evidence that you're meeting compliance, and usually what they do is they pick a random subset of devices that you have. So if you have, I don't know, 100 Cisco routers and 35 Aruba switches, they will just pick 3 at random, and they'll ask you to provide, is the right level of SSH encryption enabled on this switch, etc., etc. So obviously you don't know which ones they're going to pick prior to the audit. So your best bet, and not only just trying to pass compliance, but the whole point of PCI compliance is it's a set of recommendations or practices that you really should be doing anyway, even if you're not a PCI customer.
Totally.
So really you want to automate the validation of that on every device at all times, just for your own benefit. So yeah, that's that's what we will hopefully try and achieve.
So when you say automation for you, because we've been talking about a lot about like compliance and basically like you proving that you guys are buttoned up where you should be, do you find that your automation is more of like information gathering as opposed to configuration changes?
So if I talk about my current role, we're going through phases of the automation journey, but I might just talk more generally about automation. So automation has all forms of activities that you need to do. So really the first thing you need to do is workflow what it is that you're trying to automate. If you can't workflow what you're trying to automate, we really shouldn't be automating it. So whether that's gathering information, deploying configurations, building chatbots, whatever the case may be, you really should take the time to document, or what I call workflow, how a network engineer does it today, or how someone does it today. So that's really the most important skill that you need, and that's if you take that mindset to it, like you can automate, making a coffee machine. You can automate.
I like that.
I don't know, whatever the case may be. But if you don't know how it automates, and more importantly, you don't know when you need the inputs and at what time. For example, if I take the coffee machine, if you don't know that, you need to monitor the water levels, because if there's no water, you can't produce the coffee. If you don't understand those dependencies, those inputs and outputs, you'll spend a lot of time attempting to automate something, but you won't get that far. That's a mistake that I see a few people make, and it's really an important skill, being able to take a non-automation requirement, so something like I want to check all the VLANs, and taking that statement and breaking it down into exactly what that means in sub-steps, and that workflow is sometimes referred to as pseudocode. So writing out if-else human readable logic, and then developing your automation solutions against that logic.
This is extremely smart. And maybe I'm just stupid. That's probably the more likely scenario, but that seems like, I mean, it's like how you write a movie, right? You like take the book and you make a storyboard, right? And you like, this is where people will stand. This is how you get there and all this other stuff. So you can just follow along. I mean, it makes sense, but, okay. So let's back up for a second, because I had to stop myself from asking you how long you've been in automation. So let me just start way back at the beginning. Spare us the part where your parents were hooking up, but get us to like, I don't know, sophomore year in high school, which would be 10th grade in primary school. Is that what you guys call it?
Okay. We call it secondary school.
Just kidding. Secondary school.
Yeah. So we have 6 years in secondary school. In the last 2 years, you do precursor subjects, and then at that point, you decide whether you want to go to university, or I believe what you call like a community college, or you decide to do a trade, at the end of year 12. So year 11, I enrolled in a Cisco networking academy. That was back in 2002, and that was my first experience in networking.
I'm going to say this right now. You don't look 36. Are you 36?
I'm 34, so that's why I don't look 36.
Well, that's why he doesn't look 36.
What a compliment.
Well, in case you were wondering, if somebody just randomly comes up to you on the street and says, hey, so since you're 36, you tell them, hey, look, Aaron said I don't look a day over 35, so... But either way, you don't look like you're in the mid-30s, okay? That's basically what I meant by that, okay?
Yeah.
Why did you sign up for Cisco Networking Academy? Did you have an interest in tech?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to be one of those people who, my dad worked in the carpet, in car manufacturing business. So he had a personal computer at home. It was like a rare thing in Australia at that time.
Yeah.
So I'd always interacted with computers. At that time in my life, I was adamant I was going to become a physio, and then I decided to take this IT course purely out of I thought it would be easy for me to understand because I already know how to use computers. I soon learnt that I knew nothing about networking, and
Whoa, yeah, back up.
and that it was a pretty steep learning curve. But it was probably, it definitely was life-changing, because prior to that, I probably would have done something completely different, not in IT. And also, I used to live in a regional city, so this city only had 70,000 people, so it would have been a pretty rare thing to have a Cisco networking academy in a city of 70,000 people. So I mean, I was
Dude, you're
pretty
right
lucky
on.
in that regard.
Because Andy and I were talking. Andy was trying to figure out if it existed when he was in high school. I think we found out it was not, right? So I graduated high school in 2000. I was like 100% positive it didn't exist then, but I guess it turns out it was, because you're not that far behind me. So, and especially in that, because that's how big the city I lived in was roughly about the same size as yours. And I could tell you that, yeah, you would have had to went to a major city to get something like that, or you would have been in like we have some of these like high schools that they're like, well, we have private schools, right, where you can pay to go to, and it's supposedly better. But I can imagine a place like that having that, or like a college preparatory school having something like that, because they do. It's so weird. They do actually focus on your future. What a concept! Like they care what happens to you after year 12, which is wow, that's freaking crazy. So you guys, hold on. I just want to ask a question too, because you brought this up. Like your dad had a computer. Do you remember what kind of computer it was? Was it a Dell?
No, he had a few, but
okay.
I remember playing games on like those massive. Is it called the 5-inch hard disks?
Oh yeah, the floppy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember when we first got a computer with a CD-ROM in it. I remember when we first got the internet.
Tight.
Waiting. Yeah. So
nice.
I've been there from the start of guess.
And now you're automating
like consumer
everything.
internet. Yeah. Well,
look at you go.
Automating.
Wait,
Yeah.
hey, just wait till you turn 36. The world is your oyster. So you go to college, or you go to the Cisco NetAcad. Did you get a CC
at high school?
In high school or out of high school?
Yeah, in high school.
In high school. Oh, that's rad. Did you certify then, or did you wait till afterwards, or?
No, so then I finished that course, and then I enrolled in a diploma of IT network engineering, and that was at a private community college, and that was a 1-year course. And during that course, I got my A+, my CompTIA A+, my CompTIA Network Plus, my Microsoft Certified Systems Administrator 2000.
Wow.
And then I got my CCNA during doing that.
You did all that in 1 year?
Yeah, because it was basically like 8 to 5 every day, like Monday to Friday.
Take that, AJ.
And funnily enough, I got to 6 weeks before the end, and I did a work placement, which was part of the course. And I got a job swapping out FPOS registers for a supermarket, and then I just didn't go back and finish the course. So I've got, I didn't go back and do this one module, which, 34-year-old Daniel looks back and thinks,
you should
you're
have
an
just done
absolute
it.
idiot for not finishing it. But anyway, that's
Daniel,
the way it is.
I think you're all right, man. You're all right.
Yeah.
Were all those certs you got, was that your first year of university, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, bro.
Yeah.
I got to tell you,
I'm moving.
Generally speaking, the first year of university in America is
Absolute
a joke.
wash, yeah.
It's like high school.
They teach you how to brush your teeth. It's stupid.
It's drunken volleyball on the beach or something like that.
Yeah.
And Andy's
skydiving,
Andy's like,
ponytails, you name it, man.
Here's
waking up not knowing where you're at.
Here's another guy. Like, I wish I was in Australia and got all those certs my freshman year in college. That's amazing. That's great.
Well,
in fact, you were in Cisco Network Academy in high school too. I mean, man, that's awesome.
He's kind of saying the same thing you are, though, right? He even got all those certs, but he's like, man, I wish I would have just finished. So it's like, it just kind of goes to show you, right? Like, you could always look back and be like, I wish I would have done that. But look at all of us now. We're just leveraging what we did do, because that's all you can do, right? Some of us are a little bit further than the others. That's all. So
starting at 18 and starting at 33.
100%
big difference.
Big difference. Well, just look at it this way. Now you don't have to retire till you're 80, so you get to have all that fun. So you don't finish school. You get job placed. I didn't realize, and please take this as a compliment, I didn't realize you were this old. So, and the reason why that's interesting to me is because you've obviously been working for close to 15 years at this point, right?
Yeah, 17 years, I think. Yeah.
17. Okay, so right when you were 18.
And then I took a bit of a detour for a while. So then I obviously got a job because I was just keen to get money and to be independent. And I did the FPOS job for a little bit, swapping out cash registers, FPOS machines.
Yeah.
And
point of
then
sale, POS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I moved into a role swapping end of lease computers. So in Australia, companies lease computers for 3 years and then they swap them out. So I was doing basically end of lease replacement computers, so imaging machines and swapping them out. And then towards the end of working for that company, I started actually managing relocations. So this is back, when the internet was no good. So, if you were a major company, 2004.
Okay, so here it was already good. I don't want to ruin it for you, but we had broadband in 2004.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you did wherever you were.
Well, okay, Vermont and Australia are basically the same thing to me because I don't know where either one of them are. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But how long were you doing that role for, the swapping leases or lease machines, and then also how long were you doing the POS install? So
I did the POS installs for only like two months, and then I moved into this desktop end of lease replacement role for about, I don't know, 7 or 8 months, and then I moved into another component of that team called the relocations team. So the company that we worked for, they had numerous buildings in the central business district in Melbourne, and what they would do would be they'd refurbish a floor, like, put in new desks, new paint job, etc. And they'd need to move the computers from one floor to the other. And then sometimes they'd need to move from, like 100 High Street down to 400 High Street, which was their other building.
Yeah.
So I was in charge of like organizing all the relocations of the computers, packing up, like organizing to get staff members to pack up the computers, and then getting the delivering people to, pick up those computers and put them at the new desk at the new location, and then setting up those computers, and then doing things like robocopying their user profiles from the 100 High Street server to the 400 High Street server.
Dude, I love that term.
Yeah,
I love that term. That's the best term ever. I have a RoboCop tattoo. I just want everybody to know that.
Yeah, and so I did that.
Is it though?
Is it a tramp stamp?
Yeah.
When they're back,
they're all connected together. In theory, I just have one giant tramp stamp. Oh God!
Sorry, Daniel.
Sorry, Daniel. That's
okay.
So how long was that project for you?
We said like 8 or 9 months, right?
I did that role, so moving computers around from various locations for another, I think it would have been about 3 or 4 months. And at this point, I was living in this regional city that I lived in called Geelong, and I was commuting up to Melbourne every day. So, it'd take an hour and a half every day.
Oof.
And so I got...
One way or 2 ways?
One way.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I got sick of that pretty quickly.
And
then I took a role on the service desk at the university in the city that I lived in Geelong. And then from there, I stayed there for about 6 years, but I worked in the service desk and sort of progressed my way up, level 1, level 2, level 3. And I at this point, I still, during all this time, which is probably 3 or 4, no, it's probably about 5 years, I still liked networking. I still enjoyed it, but there just wasn't any opportunities without having experience, as we all know. So I went down the heavy certification route, but without, the exposure or the experience, and it was that chicken and egg scenario.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough that during working at the university, they had a team of network engineers, and the management there were supportive in allowing me to speak to the network team leader and expressing my interest. And he and my manager agreed for me to work 1 day a week for his team.
Oh, wow.
So that was my foot in the door.
Okay, so but you did this all on your own, and you listen to the show, so you know probably why I'm stopping right here. Okay, it's either me or Andy that's gonna stop you, and say, okay, what did you do? Because there's 2 things that I heard right there. Number one, that you had a job for about 4 years, and you were like help desk 1, 2, 3, 4. Like you basically got a new job every year. You got like a promotion, but then you also convinced somebody on a completely different department to get you got the managers to talk to each other and agreed to let you go do that job for a day a week. Like, this is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. But
yeah, I've never heard this.
I've never heard this before. You hear stuff like this, right?
You enter through the bottom and then work your way up to the top.
And you hear stuff like this all the time. You hear like oh, I expressed it. I told the networking dude like, hey, like let me have some projects or whatever, and he was like, sure, and maybe like he let you watch for an hour or something. But the fact that you got the managers to talk and he gave you the opportunity to go in there a day a week, like they talked it out. Like that was your full-time job for that 8 hours. Like that is such a cool thing because, like you said, you're stuck in the chicken or the egg situation, and And there's ways to dig yourself out of that, which you're clearly telling us right now. Like, how do you get experience without experience? Doesn't make any sense. And the answer is always figure it out. Just figure it out.
Yeah, I think and I also think that you need to be realistic with yourself, and you need to like just talking from like a personal values point of view. You need to like understand that if you want to get somewhere, it's up to you ultimately to drive the change that you want to be or you want to become, rather than relying on other people. And so like it wasn't smooth sailing. I know I glossed over it, but
no, it wasn't smooth sailing. We know that. Yeah, and give us the dirty.
I mean, I remember we on the help desk were allowed to do call manager, like Cisco call manager changes. So, update people's extensions or update people's displays on their phones or whatever the case may be.
Reset voicemail pins.
Reset
every 5 minutes. Yeah.
So, you would always, we'd always be sending tickets to the networking team, and, they might send tickets back. So, as part of just being a curious person, I'd always try and think of ways of, like, do we really need to send this to the networking team? Could we do it for them? So I'd always try and, take the opportunity whilst I was talking to anyone related to networking to try and build a relationship or try and grease their wheels a bit. So try and take something off their plate they might not be interested in or whatever the case may be. So I think, like, the point of that is if you want to get somewhere, you've got to see it from the other person's point of view, and you've got to almost answer the question to yourself of why would they bother to help me? I know that sounds quite abrasive, but
no, but it's true.
Like we all work in sales. Like, that's another thing I believe in. So you've got to be able to sell something to someone, even if it's not a product. If you want to sell yourself, you've got to be able to sell the benefits to them.
Holy crap!
If someone come up to you on the street and said, "Buy this car for $1,000" and walked off, I mean, why would you?
You wouldn't.
That's the way that I approached it.
Question.
Yep.
Did we just become best friends? Like, you listen to the show, you're like, I know what's gonna get this Aaron dude jazzed, and you're over here pressing my butt. Like, what do you want? A Christmas present? Like, just send me your address, dude. I got you. It's all good.
He just wants a T-shirt.
Well, yeah, man. You know what? We're gonna send you a T-shirt, dude. And I don't say that.
Who's paying the shipping on that?
Yeah, I will. I will, because like he just said, he greased the right wheels, and apparently I'm the right wheel.
So how did it go? You always wanted to be in networking, but you needed experience. You were in help desk. You asked your manager, "Hey, I'd like to get some experience in networking. What can you do for me?"
Yep.
He talked to the networking manager, and then they worked out that you were gonna work on the network. Partially.
Yes.
I mean,
So as an organisation, they were one of the leading organisations, and they're quite mature. You know, a lot of companies complain about how they can't get talent, but I don't see many of those companies developing talent. So the university's name is Deakin University. You know, they decided that, you know, we can use the service desk as a way to get people who are talented or interested in the industry, and then we can progress them through our ranks into other areas of our organization.
Right.
So it wasn't just me at the time. There were other people that ended up as, you know, web application programmers or system administrators or whatever the case may be. So they're an example of an organization that takes a holistic approach to talent and to progressing people. So, you know, I saw those. I can't remember if I was the first one, but I'm sure that that would have been one of the reasons why I tried to sort of make it happen.
But if you didn't ask, you would have stayed in help desk, right? Because we've heard this a lot. Aaron knows because he's got, you know, background in sales. There's so much power in asking that question, something that you want. And there's a lot of people who don't ask because they're afraid.
Yeah.
And you might still be sitting in help desk if you were waiting for your managers to read your mind and say, "Oh, I think you might want networking," right? Like you have to be your own advocate and ask that question. That seems to be the turning point in your career, right? Right there.
Yeah, and then when I finally got the 1 day a week, I ended up just working on a project to swap out all the UPSs in the university. So
wow, were they addressable?
It wasn't even real networking.
Hold on. Were they addressable?
Bench lifting.
Were they? No, were they? Oh yeah, you probably got a lot stronger. But were they addressable UPSs?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's networking.
You're
bro.
in, dude.
Yeah, you're in. You're in. Put that on your resume, dude.
Yeah. I was wanting to ask that question. What does a network person who of 1 day a week do on that 1 day of a week?
Yeah, were you getting like tier 1 tickets?
Like does like network connections go down and they're like, wait a second, oh yeah, that's right, Daniel's working network today. like how does that?
It's our part timer again.
They probably asked you to update documentation, right? Is that what they gave you when you started?
No, I physically went around with a senior person and physically swapped out UPSs in all. You know, when you have a university campus, you have everything from a full-scale data center to machine rooms to swapping out UPSs in dormitories.
In a janitor closet or something somewhere. Yeah.
So, you know, we'd have to do everything related to it. So we'd have to load test the batteries to make sure that batteries were going to, you know, be certified to do what they needed to do, network the new devices, label them, you know, unbox it. The whole deal. So, and as part of doing that, I just any chance that I could, you know, maybe persistently nudge my way into. Do you reckon I could configure the switch port to connect the UPS up to whatever the case may be?
This man is a renaissance man. One day he's installing freaking UPSs in the LAN down under, and the next thing you know, he's configuring switch ports. Putting port fast on things you shouldn't, you know. Wait, did you do that for real? You didn't accidentally put port fast on something you shouldn't have, did you? Okay.
No. I made plenty of other errors, which we
BPDU guard.
Chat about.
So I love the university experience because, like, if you look at design, and I'll use Cisco as an example, like they call things campus. Right, like campus design. I have to think that a lot of that came from a school campus, because if you look at their design, like what is a campus design, right? Like you have like a service provider edge, you have a WAN edge, whatever you want to call it. You have a data center, and then you have core, access, distribution. To your earlier point, like most places don't have all of that, right? Like they have some sort of collapsed version of that, or like a flatter version with a little less moving parts, maybe a little more cloud, whatever. But what's cool in your situation is that like it's a true campus, like in more than one word, and you get to see and touch so many different things, and not even on like a medium to mid-size scale. Like this is serious stuff here. Like I could speak for the universities here. They're some of the first places that they got like real serious network stuff. And you're the same age I am, so I know when you were there and like what time that was. And I have to imagine that like a lot of that stuff was like the network, like, so for instance, like Wi-Fi in the dorm and stuff like that. That stuff all had to be like coming out as you were there, right? Like, whoa, you know, there's just so much to do, right?
Yeah. And so then, so during that time, I did that 1 day a week, and then a networking role came up where someone moved on, and then I obviously applied for that role.
Shoo-in.
And had to go through the interview process and do everything that was involved with that. So
did they ask you any like CCNA like questions in the interview? Like or networking stuff? You probably don't remember.
I can't remember, but I remember being so nervous about going towards the interview. I remember being, you know, I knew every person in the room, except the university had a policy where they have 3 interviewers. So, you know, 2 from the department you're from and 1 from maybe the science department. You know,
random.
So
that's weird.
Yeah, just a random person who's probably there to assess your character or whatever the case may be.
That's an interesting. That's an interesting concept because, for one, I've never heard of it, so that makes it interesting right off the bat. But what the theory? Like, I get that you could maybe be a character judge, but what's interesting is like, I don't know. Do you know who Malcolm Gladwell is? You ever heard that name before?
I think I have.
Okay, yeah. Don't strain yourself too hard because, so he writes books and like scientific books about like human behavior, right? And he's got a lot of famous ones out there like Make It Stick and some others. He's just really into like how the human brain works, and he has a concept that he calls being mismatched, which I think is interesting. So like the FBI and all these people always say like, oh, they could tell when someone's lying or like interrogating them, and they're uncomfortable and all those other things. Well, Malcolm has like just stacks of evidence and different sort of like research papers and all these publications that say like none of that is true. So basically what he says is like you can be mismatched. So for instance, like I'm not mismatched at all. Like you can tell what's going on like in my inner self, right? But some people are like inwardly just like mad, but outwardly they look happy, or vice versa. That's usually the worst one. They're happy on the inside, but their face, like we always say the term like resting bitch face, right? Like that. Well, I mean that's a thing. It's like
I get to run down here for sure.
Your wife has it, AJ.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't listen to this, so I'm not worried about her hearing it.
Oh God,
Mrs. Blinky.
Mrs. Blinky.
Yeah.
So
Mrs. Blinky.
That brings up the part about like the random person coming in the room to be like a quote unquote character witness, right? Like let's just see how good of a person this is. Like that's a weird concept to me, because if they knew anything about the science of human behavior, they would know that was actually probably putting that person in a more uncomfortable situation, which is going to make them more likely to act like not themselves. Especially with those people that you know already, you know, you're encompassed by people that you know, you've worked with, and then there's a stranger. That person already feels weird too, because they're kind of a stranger in the situation. But anyway, that was just a weird thing to hear. So I just wanted to make sure that like I addressed it, because I thought it was strange.
Interviews aren't supposed to be comfortable, right?
Absolutely not. I agree.
And if he's interviewing with people that he already works with, it could be a softball layup kind of thing for them. Like, oh, let's just give him the job.
But I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
But maybe that's why they bring him in, like just as an objective third party that doesn't know him, hasn't worked with him. Like, why do you guys see in this guy? I don't see it. You know, maybe I don't know. Devil's advocate.
But to my earlier point, though,
think if they're going to bring in like a third party from like the outside, it might be with a department that they commonly do work with. There's, you know, somebody that you maybe not see all the time, but would interact with at some point.
Or maybe the help desk folks, right? Or like the sysadmins or something, right? Like, I mean, they kind of know what you're talking about. So like
somebody else in the greater IT team.
Right. They would at least understand what was happening in the room, and they wouldn't just sit there like, what?
So Daniel, beyond being nervous, for that interview, which we'd all be, did you feel like you could answer the questions? Did you have enough base of knowledge in your studies that, you know, you could address these questions, or were you just like, I don't know anything of this stuff, guys, sorry?
Yeah, I thought I would, but I guess reflecting back on that, I would have been 23 or 24 at the time, and probably like in most young people, you know, you're not really sure who you are or who you aren't at that point.
Yeah.
So I just remember, like, you know, being in a very small town, and back to what we were talking at the very start, you know, there's only a certain amount of size companies that offer those opportunities in those locations. So, you know, I was acutely aware that, you know, if I don't make it here as a network engineer, there isn't going to be many other opportunities around town, and then, you know, I might have to move to the big smoke or whatever the case may be. You know, I was probably feeling the pressure more upon myself rather than
this was your shot, right? This was a big deal for you. You
absolutely
needed this. Yeah.
And yeah, I think putting pressure on yourself can be like debilitating sometimes. Also, sometimes I think, you know, as a human, you should, you know, you should live up to your own expectations first. So
yeah, like don't let yourself down. Of course.
If you can manage the stress, you can use it to your advantage, right?
100%.
A little bit of adrenaline doesn't hurt in that kind of situation, but
yeah,
if you panic and your prefrontal cortex shuts down, it's a different kind of
or
energy,
you're just
right?
mismatched,
So
you know, and you really
act.
just got to take a crap. Who knows?
Yeah.
So how did you like? There's two things that I'm dying to know from you. One of them is one thing that we've been trying to catch up to this whole time, because I know AJ's chomping at the bit over there. How the hell did you get into automation, dude? And how long have you been doing it?
Okay, cool.
Wait, did he get that job? So you got the job.
Okay, I got the job.
Yeah.
He's in automation now. I'm only pushing you forward a little bit because I just assumed that you had networking jobs, you know, throughout that time period, right? Which is, I'm sure, all interesting. We have that, but I know the most interesting part, the morsel here, is your automation. Which, how did you even find out about that kind of stuff? Like, just walk us through the whole journey there.
Yeah, so around 2015, I started working for managed services, professional services company, and I was given, the first project I was given was to do a large scale WAN migration, so move 80 sites from one internet service provider to another internet service provider. And so that involved writing change plans for them all, you know, coming up with a project schedule, etc., etc. So during that, I basically got an Excel spreadsheet and put in one column the current config, and then in the column next to it I put in the proposed config or the implementation plan, and then in the column next to it I put the the backup plan. Then on another Excel tab I had the verification plan, which was all the show commands I was going to run. And after doing like 3 of those change plans, I thought, this is crazy. I can't write Excel spreadsheets.
It's got to be a better way.
85 sites, right? Like, this is just not efficient. It's unreliable. Like, because I
wait, hold on. Andy's laughing. Were you doing this morning?
I've been doing this my whole career.
he's like Notepad plus, baby.
I've been migrating WAN sites for 5 years, painfully, manually, and I've had the thought that there's got to be a better way, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, so during that time, this project was quite time sensitive. So I remember, like, I'd never ever even used Python before, and one of the consulting team members back at the head office, because I was out at the customer site, said, you should look into Paramiko. It's an SSH library for Python. And first thing I thought was, what's Paramiko and what's Python? I know what SSH is.
What's a library?
So
that's what I would have said. What the hell is a library?
So I started, you know, furiously Googling things and trying to work it out, and, you know, trying to get Python installed on my machine and doing a whole bunch of other things. And I basically spent a weekend or two trying to work this out whilst writing the change plans the classic way, shall I say. And then I reached a point where I just thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to work this out given the timeline pressures. So I actually abandoned automation at that point, just went back to the Excel spreadsheets, which worked fine. And the project was finished in about 4 or 5 months. and everyone was happy and all the sites were migrated. But that triggered something in me to sort of identify that my current practices probably weren't going to scale for those larger activities, and that I needed to probably take some time to learn some new skills to help me be efficient in my current job. So then after the end of that project, I enrolled in a Python for networking for Python course on GNS3.
Oh, was it David Bumble?
No, a gentleman named Mihai. I forget his surname. But yeah, that went through, lists, dictionaries, all the Python fundamentals. And I remember the first time that I used NetMiko, which is a product. It's a common network library that's used throughout the industry now. I remember the first time like connecting to a device and grabbing a show command. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm never going back.
Yeah.
So I did that course and I learned a lot. And then the year after, I worked on an ACI implementation. So that was 2016. And a colleague of mine who was a lot more skilled than me, he was dual CCIE. He also knew Python. He developed, an Excel spreadsheet that we'd fill in the values in the spreadsheet, and then it would use the Python ACI toolkit and deploy ACI constructs. And this was ACI version, I think 10H or something like that. So it was like the rawest of raw ACI implementations. And that was the first time that I actually ran Python code doing something at work. And I just remember at the time just trying to learn anything and everything I could about it. And so he built the structure, and then I would tinker away at the code. So that's how I got into automation. And then from there, it's just progressed in terms of use cases, in terms of complexity. And yeah,
I would say
that's how that came about.
It's interesting because, most businesses that are going through any sort of migration have gotten to that same point. Every network engineer that's doing any sort of migration has gotten to the exact same point that you've been at, where it was like, all right, I'm not typing any more of this crap. Most of it is like literally one number different. The companies that I interact with, they all have well over 1,000 sites, right? And trust me, I get lost in the sauce. I'm like, which one is this again? And I can only imagine working there. But there's always a tipping point right there. So what you did, I think that's atypical to most folks, and I'm not going to pick on Andy, is that you were like, there's got to be a better way. You Googled it. You found something called Paramiko, and you're like, what in the hell is this? And then you probably saw a couple of scripts, and you saw somebody doing it maybe on a YouTube video or something. You're like, okay, what? Because I was the same way. I'm like, it's that easy? Like, you just go fetch everything? And then I thought to myself, like, okay, now I feel stupid because I didn't think of that before. Like, why wasn't I the one that thought of automation? Like, why weren't any of us? You know what I mean? Because like it's stuff that pisses us off on a daily basis. It's like every little thing has to be perfect, and we know how configs are. And here it was the whole time, kind of. But like, gosh, let me make a template. Let me, I just want to type one number in, and I could say 1 is my starting number, increment by 1, and it pumps all that out. Just like even stuff you can do in an Excel spreadsheet, which is rad. But most people in that tipping point scenario don't go down the road of let me just get some automation in there. Maybe some more now, but in 2015, definitely not. That was not happening.
I think there's a couple of things to say to that, right? Like, I think early on in network automation, there was just a lot of people going, you need to learn Python. You need to learn Python. And then you go and you learn Python, but it doesn't actually tell you like how this applies to network engineering. And then I think some people also start down that path, and they struggle so much with learning the code that they're just like, well, if I just did this the way I normally do it, it'd be done by now, rather than me trying to, quote unquote, waste time learning how to do something new.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yep. Yeah.
It can be a lot.
Like back in 2015, there wasn't DevNet. There wasn't
right. That's what I'm saying.
IP. wasn't IPv0, there wasn't free YouTube resources, there wasn't network to code Slack. Maybe there was, I didn't know about it. There wasn't anywhere near the amount of resources that there are now.
Right.
So, now is a great time to start learning. Now there's a mixture of free courses, intermediate courses to expensive courses that are worth it as well.
There's a lot of great free blogs out there. A lot of bloggers write about automation.
Like what?
Getting started on your network automation with Ansible.
Man,
and I know Daniel's got some good one too on his
Who like this? That sounds like a great title. Do you know where we can find such an article?
Absolutely. You
where?
You can just go to my blog.noblinkyblinky.com.
Oh, isn't that convenient?
Well, AJ, the first time you showed us that Ansible demonstration, that blew my mind because it's the first time I saw.
Ansible's a cool way to get
God.
started for sure.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense to a network engineer, right?
And I need to thank I need to thank the panel right now because I had a little epiphany when Daniel was talking and Aaron that I failed out of computer programming in college and they weeded me out of computer science major because I couldn't hack C++. And I think when I got to your point, Daniel, you were talking about that this is insane. There's got to be a better way. When I reached that point and I was told it was programming, I got a block. I got some like PTSD or something that I'm like, well, I can't do that. That's out of I'll never be able to do that. So I guess I'll get a job at McDonald's or something after this. Like, I don't know what to do next, but it's just a personal thing I'm going to have to overcome because automation is here. It's at my company.
Yeah.
They're even offering very expensive training, but I have this block in my head that I can't do it, which isn't true, but it's based on experience. And I got to get over that because, this is where we are. Everything's automated now.
And I just want to emphasize that it isn't easy, and there'll be so much time where you'll literally just be banging your head against, the figurative wall.
Well, he does that anyway. So what you're saying is, like, do you see the dent? You see the dent on his desk right there?
Might increase a little bit.
Well, the old Andy would have asked Daniel, "Were you a computer science major? Did you learn coding in college?" I try to find a way to discount why you did what you did successfully, and I couldn't. Yeah. Right? Do you have kids? But that's the epiphany I had, which is I just have a block about it, and I got to get over that, or I'm just going to be left behind.
Yeah, after all these years, dude, you've talked yourself out of it for sure.
I think
it was traumatic. I wanted to work in computers. They said you got to be computer science. I went in there like, all right, buckos, let's do this.
Yeah.
And in 3 weeks, they were like, you don't belong here.
You're not cutting it. You're out.
And I headed for Z Hills and got my communications degree. But
they're like, if I was you, I'd think about dropping this class. There's not too many people in here. You're just sucky.
Sorry, Dan.
That's okay. I think more broadly, I think we discredit how much network engineers are comfortable being uncomfortable, and I think we discredit how much that people learn being in networking. Like one of my best friends, he's a plumber, and I chat to him about work, but his eyes glaze over. But I use the analogy to him. Imagine gravity changed every 3 years in plumbing.
Wow.
Imagine how many new skills you'd have to learn. And
no
he's like,
kidding.
okay.
No kidding.
I get where you're coming from. So I don't think you should beat yourself up about it. And the reason I wanted to mention that I had a crack and then just decided to give up is like anything that's hard or difficult isn't going to be easy straight away and might need a little bit extra persistence or sometimes you're not mentally in the right space. Other times you might not have reached the true pain point yet.
Ooh, maybe it's got to hurt bad enough, Andy. Maybe you just haven't hurt bad enough.
That.
Pain is always a motivator for me.
You got a low tolerance. It sounds like.
But did you hear him, Andy?
Did you say I have a high tolerance? Wait,
I said low tolerance actually.
I thought that was a dig.
To be clear, so
Daniel,
Daniel, what would you do?
Did you hear what he said though? Did you hear what he said? He gave up with that one project and went back to doing his spreadsheets.
Yep.
Right.
But then he gave a crack at it again because
it wasn't the timing was off. Right.
Yeah, and then have the persistence. To
know that
Daniel.
To know
try again.
To know that it'll eventually work and that you just didn't have like the stress capacity at that time to do that, because that's what projects do to you. They just amplify your stress, Right. And so to know that that was actually so beneficial, you just couldn't get it fast enough to be efficient with it. However, you knew that it would be at some point, like you just stuck to it. That's the lesson for sure. So then if you're talking to like a guy like Andy, right, who did have a crack at it, but a very long time ago, what is it like? How does one then? Because you said that there's like a pain point sometimes. It's like it's all of a sudden it's just so much pain that it forces you to change. Let's say we're not there. What can you do then as just like a normal network engineer to get yourself into this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So there's a few ways you can go about it, and there's a few people that I respect in their industry with their opinions as well.
Such as?
Sorry?
Such as?
Jeremy Schulman, NWA Network Automaniac. He talks about this a lot. You can even start with things that aren't, pushing configs or validating configs. You can start with things like producing spreadsheets or reading in spreadsheets and
I was doing that for a while.
Reading in spreadsheets of IPAM data and printing it out to a screen, or reading in spreadsheets and transforming a spreadsheet format A into spreadsheet format B. So you can start with stuff that's not going to cause any risk at all, and just learn the fundamentals of Python or whatever the programming language you can choose that you feel that you can use. And then the other thing that I'd recommend is gaining access to a lab or building your own, and just experimenting safely. So experimenting with the consequences of my failures are trivial. So therefore, I can really try and go and actually break stuff. I mean, when we all first started out in networking, I'm sure at least one of us on this call thought, what happens when I do plug a switch back into a same port? Like, does spanning tree really do what we think it does? I'm sure. In fact, back to the university example, someone did that. Like, they did it by accident, though.
It's how it always happens.
So, you should be able to experiment safely. There's a couple of free resources online, so you can use the Cisco DevNet Sandbox.
Nice.
Myself, I invested in getting an Intel NUC. I don't know if you know what that is.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Little computer, and I run a network simulator on there called EVE-NG, and then I have a couple of Linux virtual machines on there as well. So in there I've got a little, one of each vendor, and if ever I want to play around or have something like that, that's what I use. But you can start out with something that doesn't have to do anything with networking, and just something that automates something in your life. I mean, another example is using Python to send emails, for example.
I was doing it when I first started out to read. I was looking for something on Craigslist. Now this is kind of unethical to just like web scrape, but it was cool because I was printing it to like an Excel spreadsheet, and it was like the item I was looking for, where it was, and how much it was, and like how long it'd been online. Just like stupid stuff, but it was easy to just hit a button, like run code, and then all of that. What did I save? 5 minutes of Googling, But it was cool. Like it's like you were saying earlier. It's just cool to see it actually do something, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, what else can I do with this stuff? So automate the boring stuff. That book is awesome, right?
Yep, that's what I was going to mention as well. I mean, that book is meant at your middle office worker, not even like a tech savvy person. So that's one that'll get you some productivity straight out of the gate. And I guess once you get that buzz or that feeling of I've just saved myself time, it's a virtuous cycle after that.
It's like a drug.
Once you save yourself an hour, you're like, can I save myself a week? Can I save myself
Here's the question.
A month?
If you automate
how much have you saved so far?
If you automate something and you save yourself a week, do you tell anybody?
Oh, depends what it is.
He's like, I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm not telling anybody.
I think that's actually a great. I think you bring up I know you don't mean it like this, but.
Oh, but I do. I know what you're gonna say.
Automating does save time, but I think we get stuck on that as the conception of automation is it's going to save time and we're going to get rid of people.
Right.
That's not actually what the business wants. The business doesn't want save time. What they want is increased reliability at all costs. Reliability is speed. If you make anything reliable and consistently reliable, it's more important to anyone than speed. And I would argue that by making something reliable, and being able to rely on it being reliable, you can make more things more reliable, which means you move faster.
Right.
It's the classic case of the tortoise and the hare.
Right.
Now,
right.
when you say reliable, are you talking about, like, I know some people use like automation to like self-heal a network, or are you talking about like when it does whatever config, it's going to do it the exact same way every single time that it runs?
Yep.
Or are you kind of saying everything, all of the above, or go a little deeper in that?
Yeah. So one joke I like to make is that automation automates my mistakes with 100% accuracy.
Wow.
So
I like that.
Undefeated.
Like, that's the point, right? It'll do exactly what you want it to do. And so just being able to build things that do exactly what you expect them to do. I mean, I'm a fallible human being like the rest of us. I get tired, sad, happy, uninterested, motivated, excited. But computers just compute, right? So they will do literally what you tell them, whether it's
good or bad.
Whether it's 3 a.m. Kansas time or 3 a.m. Melbourne time, they'll do what they do. So
shout out to Kansas. Yo, by the way, did you know my sister lives in Kansas? Because that was weird. You know, we're basically best friends now since earlier. You know, I'll tell you what else is reliable though. The fact that we usually try to keep this around an hour. So I'm trying to pump the brakes here. So what I'm going to ask you to do is give us kind of your final words of wisdom here, like we were making fun of it last week, like do this right now, but give us your do this right now. Like what should someone like Andy be doing if he's just deathly afraid of this? Like, cause it's coming, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard to say. I'm not saying that everyone should automate. I'm not imposing that upon everyone.
Well, I actually like hearing that.
It's more like take a step back from work and just decide what you want to achieve in your life more broadly. I mean, like a lot of us enjoy work, and it's a large part of our identity, but you really need to understand why it is you go to work, or what motivates you, and what provides you energy and what doesn't. So for me, like I enjoy doing automation because it enables me to have time with my family, and it allows me to live a normal life in terms of, always giving my son a bath every single night, or always feeding him breakfast, or whatever the case may be. So it enables me to have quality outcomes outside of work, and not working at 2 a.m. in the morning and
I love it.
waking up grumpy or stressed, or whatever the case may be. So if you start with that goal in mind about what you want to achieve as a person, then you may find that automation is or isn't for you. For example, if you live on the adrenaline rush of doing cutovers at 3 o'clock in the morning, I mean, you do you know what I mean? If that's something that you're into.
You do you idiot.
That,
keep on keeping on.
I'm good on that.
Weirdo.
But for me, I take my work seriously, and I like to do the best job I possibly can.
Yep.
But my priorities lie outside
elsewhere.
of work. More than that. So that's
you work to live, not live to work.
Yeah, and then someone starting out, like I've got a blog post on starting your network automation journey. The other thing I'd encourage people to do is reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn, and feel free to ask for advice. I've built a couple of tools that cater to people like Andy. I'm not going to pick on you, Andy. Just
it's okay.
You're the dude.
You're the dude.
that are really, I actually built them for someone like yourself. So asking you to just fill in the minimal amount of info, and then just run it, and then just see it in action, so that you can get the benefits without having to sit there and write a bunch of code. One of those tools is called Day One Net Toolkit. So
Sweet.
It literally, you put in the variables, and it will go and discover all the facts it can about your network, and it will even produce an Excel spreadsheet with your device name, your serial number,
Andy's
the interface
salivating over there,
it,
dude. You're gonna get
whether it's got IPv6 on it, etc. So
I don't know. Andy might get in trouble running a tool like that at his work.
100%. So that's good.
We're heavily automating right now. It's just begun.
You, sir, are...
Well, I'm saying I would figure that some kind of security application would think that that's malicious.
Well, no, not if it's all SSH traffic.
They're working all that out and building all the tools. But Dan, you had me at saving time and having more time with
the family.
My family.
Start with your why.
It's all about time, right? We're only alive for a certain amount of time, and I want to spend more time with my family and less time working. And the chicken or the egg is I have to invest time now so that I can save time later by automating stuff, and that's the commitment I guess I got to make.
You're a smart dude. You know that? Anybody ever tell you that?
So, Andy, it sounds like you've been afraid of what could be your freedom.
All right, we're gonna save that for another one. We're gonna have to buy.
What am I gonna complain about?
We're gonna go ship him a couch and make him lay on it. And we're all just gonna consult him. Dan's gonna get his this voice out, and he's gonna start talking to him all sexy like.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So Daniel, thank you for visiting us from the future. Thanks for visiting us from the future, because we know it's Wednesday there now. It's still Tuesday here in America. I know these all the episodes get released on a Wednesday, so that might be a little confusing if you're listening at home. But we're recording this on a Tuesday, and Daniel's actually already on Wednesday, so maybe he's already listening to the recording. We don't know. These are all still mysteries to us. We really appreciate you showing up, dude. We know that you have obviously a lot of stuff that you could be doing other than hanging out with us, and we appreciate it. We appreciate you listening. It sounds like you'll have a lot of cool stuff. Just real quickly, what is your website and your Twitter handle? Your Twitter handle is your full name, but your website.
And my website is blog.danielteycheney.com. Probably the easiest one to remember is if you go to GitHub, and my username on GitHub is WriteMeme. So WRITEMEME.
Right meme. Okay, cool.
And it's a play on right memory.
Yeah. But memes are so much funnier. So, dude, you rock. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for putting up with our American ignorance. We got that in droves, let me tell you. We're representing every corner of the United States here. So if we weren't ignorant enough for you, we're going to have to get some more people on the show to help paint a better picture of us. But dude, thanks for giving us the insight. We appreciate all that. The tools are rad. We're gonna put your website and your @ and stuff in the show notes so that people can get to that kind of stuff. And we'll also hopefully maybe tweet some of that stuff out too. I know AJ will tag you in that when we tweet the episode out and stuff, but just so everybody that's listening knows, if you can go find some of those cool tools that he made, we'll make that as accessible as possible, because it sounds like a really cool entry into getting yourself started with the automation journey. So thank you so much for joining us, and us being the rest of the team here, and for everyone here, thank you for listening. Again, if you would do us such a kind bit of favorism and hit that like and subscribe button so that you can catch more shows and listen to more people like Daniel. Probably not from Australia, but we can only be so lucky. If you got any friends, Daniel, holler at us. We'd love to pick their brain too. You never know.
Got plenty of mates, Cobber.
Oh, okay. All right. Mates is friend here for those of you listening. Mate means friend. I'm just messing with you. I did not make a Vegemite joke when you said you feed your kid breakfast, by the way, which I did want to, and I guess me saying that right now is me making the joke. So, and it's good because no one's laughing. So, on that note, we will see you next week. See ya.
Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at ArtOfNetEng. That's Art of NETENG. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.